Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so you've sent us sources about what's happening with Hudson's Bay, and wow, it really jumped out at us that this isn't just another retail story.
No, not at all.
We really want to get into what's going on and, why it feels so significant.
Absolutely. And as soon as you look into Hudson's Bay, you realize, well, it's not just department stores we're talking about.
Right.
This company goes way back, 1670. It's actually Canada's oldest company.
1670, that's incredible.
Yeah, and its history, I mean, the fur trade, land rights, its complex dealings with Indigenous communities, it really shaped a huge part of Canada's story.
Okay, so that's the mission for this deep dive then. Let's get past the headlines about, liquidations and maybe the end of the stores
Hmm.
and try to understand the bigger picture, especially with all those historical artifacts involved. We know you want insights quickly, but also thoroughly.
And that's what we'll do. Give you that deep understanding without getting lost in the weeds.
Perfect. So let's start with where things stand right now, the current situation.
Okay, so the latest news really points towards, well, the end of Hudson's Bay as we know it, as a retailer anyway.
The liquidation.
Exactly. They're moving to liquidate all the merchandise in the last 6 stores. And these were the stores they initially planned to keep open.
Right, I remember that. So this feels final.
It definitely signals how serious the financial problems are.
And didn't we see something from Adam Zalev, the financial advisor?
Yes, from Reflect Advisors.
Yeah.
His affidavit basically said it's unlikely they'll find a buyer for those remaining stores.
Unlikely. Oof.
And more than that, he suggested those 6 stores are actually hurting the search for investment, sort of dragging things down.
Wow. Okay. And this is after they already closed. How many was it?
A lot. 90 other Bay stores were already in liquidation, plus 13 Saks off 5th and 2 Saks Fifth Avenue locations.
Good grief. That's massive.
It is. And you're looking at potentially over 9,000 jobs lost across the board.
9,000 jobs.
Yeah.
That scale really puts it in perspective. It's not just a store. It's a huge employer and, well, maybe a sign of bigger shifts in retail.
Could be. I mean, it definitely highlights the struggles of traditional brick and mortar, even for such a historic name.
Is there any chance for those last 6 stores, though? I thought I read something.
There is a small window. Zalev did mention that Hudson's Bay can pull those stores out of liquidation if a solid offer comes in by June 15th.
Okay, so June 15th, there's a deadline, but it sounds like a long shot.
It does feel that way, yeah. The clock's ticking.
And the reasons they gave in the creditor protection filing, what were the main pressures?
Well, they cited a few major things.
Mm.
The trade war, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was huge, obviously.
Of course.
And also just a general drop in foot traffic downtown. Fewer people around.
A perfect storm, almost.
Pretty much a combination of big economic hits and all this financial difficulty now leads us to another really complex part of the story.
The artifacts.
Exactly. The historical collections.
Yeah, this plan to auction off, what was it, 1,700 art pieces?
Yeah.
And over 2,700 artifacts through Heffel Gallery.
That's right. They're seeking court permission for it.
And this isn't just like selling off old office furniture, is it?
Not even close. These items have huge historical and cultural weight. We're not talking about simple assets or, collectibles in the usual sense.
It's a royal charter.
Precisely. Think about that charter from King Charles II in 1670. That single document, it's foundational.
How so? What did it actually do?
Well, it's established the company, the fur trade business, but critically, it granted Hudson's Bay control over a massive territory, Rupert's Land.
Rupert's Land, I've heard of that. It was enormous. Right?
Huge. And the charter gave the company immense power over trade and, really importantly, over its relationships with Indigenous peoples for centuries.
Okay, wow. So selling that, it's not just selling paper.
Absolutely not. It raises massive questions about, who owns history, how do we protect national heritage when a company's in trouble.
Which explains why so many groups are concerned. You mentioned archives, governments, historians.
Exactly. They're worried these things could disappear into private hands or just not be treated with the respect they deserve.
It's a fascinating clash, isn't it? The immediate financial needs of a company versus the long-term preservation of history.
It really is. And that brings us squarely to the Indigenous perspective, which is just vital here.
Yes, the letter from Grand Chief Kyra Wilson, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. What was the core message there?
Her demand was very clear. Stop the auction.
Just stop it.
Yes. Because of the, quote, profound cultural, spiritual, and historical significance these items have for First Nations.
And she framed it as potentially continuing colonial dispossession if it goes ahead without consultation.
That's the powerful argument she made, that selling these things off without transparency, without involving First Nations, is essentially repeating historical harms.
That really reframes the whole issue, doesn't it? This isn't just a standard bankruptcy asset sale.
Not in the slightest. As Grand Chief Wilson put it, the HBC's legacy is inseparable from the post-contact history of the original peoples on this land.
So these items aren't just artifacts.
In her view, and the view of many First Nations, they're pieces of living history. Some might be sacred objects, some might have been stolen or should rightfully belong to First Nations.
That raises incredibly important questions about ownership, about history itself, and, well, reconciliation.
Absolutely. It cuts right to the heart of those issues.
What are the specific demands then, beyond just halting the auction?
They're calling for a review process led by First Nations, and also for a public catalog, a list of everything being considered for sale, so people actually know what's at stake.
Transparency, that seems fundamental.
It does. It points towards needing a much more respectful and inclusive way of handling these kinds of historical items, especially given HBC's specific history.
Okay, and then there are the archives too. The Canada Advisory Committee for Memory of the World also weighed in.
Yes, they did. Their main focus was on that royal charter we talked about.
What do they want done with it?
They're asking for it to be transferred to a public archive. They specifically suggested the archives of Manitoba, actually, because Hudson's Bay has donated things there before.
Makes sense. Keep it safe in public.
Exactly. Their argument is about protecting this unique, irreplaceable, internationally significant document, especially now with the company's future so uncertain.
So again, it underscores that this isn't just some old document. It has real ongoing significance.
Precisely. It's about securing public access to a key piece of history. And it raises that question again. What responsibility do corporations have when they hold items of such cultural importance?
It's also striking that we don't actually know everything that's on the auction block, right?
Right.
Beyond the charter, the company hasn't released a full list.
No, there's a lack of clarity there, which definitely adds to the anxiety around this. What else might be sold off privately?
Is this need to sell these historical items? Is it purely because the retail side is struggling so badly?
Well, it certainly seems directly linked. When companies face severe financial distress, they often look at all their assets. And sometimes, unfortunately, that includes historical collections that aren't part of the core business anymore.
Right, makes sense financially, even if it's heartbreaking historically. But we do have some idea of what might be included. Someone leaked some details.
Yeah, an unnamed source gave some hints. It sounds like a really diverse collection. Paintings going back to 1650.
Wow, 1650s.
Yeah. The famous point blankets, of course, various documents,
Yeah.
and apparently even collectible Barbie dolls.
Barbie dolls. Okay, that's unexpected.
Right. It just shows the sheer range of stuff accumulated over, 350 plus years.
Yeah.
From 17th century art to modern collectibles, it's quite something.
So let's try and wrap this up. Where do things stand?
Okay, so summing it up, we're likely seeing the end of Hudson's Bay as a major retail force. A company with this incredibly long 355-year history, deeply, deeply tangled up with Canada's development.
And at the same time as this retail end is happening, there's this huge, complex fight brewing over its historical artifacts.
Exactly. The potential collapse of the stores is one thing. But what happens to these artifacts that touches on really profound issues?
Issues like preserving history, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, corporate responsibility.
All of that is all wrapped up in this one company's potential demise.
So maybe a final thought for you, listening. When a company is this woven into the fabric of a nation's history, what does its end really mean?
And what are the ripple effects when something like this unravels? How do we handle the physical piece of that history? And how do we balance the different claims, especially the crucial Indigenous perspectives on items that hold such deep cultural meaning?
Lots to think about there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.